right, guys, today we are going to be redoing the exhaust on my Stepside Silverado. And if this sounds like deja vu, don't worry, you're not going crazy. This is actually the third version of the exhaust that we're going to be building. And it's honestly probably not going to be the last one because I have a very particular set of noise or sounds, I guess, that I'm trying to get. And unfortunately, with the muffler that's on there right now, we are just not even close. We're not in the ballpark. So it's going and we're switching it out with something different. See, my whole exhaust dream, I guess you could call it, was based around a YouTube video that I saw of a Trailblazer SS with a Flowmaster Hushpower Pro Series muffler. Now, from the outside, I loved how that truck sounded on YouTube. And honestly, the Stepside, I love how that sounds too from the outside. But when you're driving inside the truck, it is just way too loud and it drones, not in just like one specific exhaust frequency, but it drones everywhere, like at part throttle, wide open throttle. You know, it doesn't matter if it's 2,000 RPM or 4,000 or 5,000. It's just not right. It's too loud, so we need to turn down the volume of the system, hopefully with this different muffler that I've already picked up. Now, I still am going to be running the X pipe into the Y pipe, and there's a chance that that potentially is contributing to some of this drone and unwanted noise that I am experiencing. But first, we're going to just try swapping out the muffler to try to, like I said, lower the volume of the system. And if this muffler actually does what I think it will, and maybe it will still drone a little bit here and there, I can actually chase those drone frequencies with a quarter wave resonator, or a J pipe as they're commonly referred to, because that'll cancel drone at a very specific RPM. Like if it's only 2,000 RPM, that's the problem area, well, that's easy, we can take care of that. But first, we need to start with a system that's actually in the ballpark for the sound level. Now, in terms of this muffler, it's like a love-hate thing, because some days I'll be driving the Stepside around and I'll be like, all right, I can get into this, it sounds kind of cool. But then other times I'll be like doing the school pickup or something like that, and I'm like, this is just ridiculous. There's no reason this little 270 horsepower 4.8 should be this loud. So we're going to be changing the exhaust. But before we get to that, today I wanted to give you guys just a quick update on the UglyTruck project, because at the end of the last video, I had the suspension kind of complete, but there's a few little tweaks and just last minute things I buttoned up that I wanted to show you guys. The first is the exhaust. Some of you guys were wondering if that would clear now that we're about 2 inches lower than we were before. It's definitely gonna be tight, but I think it will still work. Obviously, we're not all the way at ride height now because the bed's not on the truck. And like I said, I think it'll work, but if it doesn't, I'll just have to redo this section of the tailpipe. Because when I built it before, basically I had the top there kind of touching the heat shield that normally sits on the bottom of the bed, but I have since removed the heat shield just on the off chance that I'm gonna have to rebuild the tailpipe. And honestly, with a 4-inch free-flowing exhaust and a turbo up front, I don't think there's going to be a ton of heat that's like radiating from the exhaust, because, you know, as the gas expands, it kind of cools down. And by the time it's all the way back here to the tailpipe, it's not like there's going to be a 700-degree tailpipe burning the bottom of the bed. So I don't really care about the heat shield. That's going away. And that'll give me just about 2 inches more clearance for the exhaust. If I need it, of course. Now, the other thing I had to do was make a notch in the bed rails for the C-notch that we have here in the frame. And I'm really happy with how those turned out. So basically, these rails are spot welded once every like rib. So all I did was cut these 2 spot welds here and here, and then I sliced this rib kind of right down the middle, and I was able to kind of grind those smooth, threw some primer on there, and basically it kind of looks factory. And you don't have to see those little flat pieces still hanging out. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. The bottom of the bed, other than that, that's basically it. If I would have left the heat shield in, I also would have had to make a notch in the heat shield for that upper shock mount. But now that the heat shield is gone, I have plenty of room for those, even though they do stick up above the frame. Because remember, the actual bed floor, it does sit like 2 inches higher than that surface right there, and that's actually what touches the frame. So anyway, we'll get this bed back on the truck, get the UglyTruck outside, and then we'll work on our exhaust. All right, jumping ahead in time a little bit, I have the bed back on the truck, I have the tailgate on, I have the bumper on. So basically this is its final configuration, 100% complete and ready to hit the road. Now I will say real quick, I was a little bit kind of nervous about how I mocked up the weight of the chassis when I was kind of doing the suspension work the other day. Basically I took this whole stack of tires, these are the stock 20s from the AT4 HD, and I figured these weigh about 80 pounds a piece, and I actually had all 4 of them on there. I showed you the 3 that I had stacked out back, and I actually had the 4th one kind of in the middle of the frame right there. And believe it or not, that worked out to be just about perfect. I have right now, I just measured it, 2.5 inches of exposed length on the shock, which means I have a full 4 inches of extension available, which to me, that's perfect. I was actually shooting for like 2 1/4, but we're within 1/4 of an inch, and I'm perfectly pleased with that. I've got plenty of room on either side of ride height for the shocks to do what they need to do now. In terms of clearance for other stuff, it is a little bit tight under there. I have a 4-inch tailpipe that I'm running up and over the axle, and I took the heat shield out and I thought that would give me a little bit more room to push the exhaust up if I had to, but that center rib that I had to trim to get around the C-notch, well, of course, that goes all the way across the bottom of the bed floor, and the exhaust just about touches that. So even though I took the heat shield off, that didn't really buy me any extra room. And also, the center of the differential does come kind of close to that rib underneath the bed. So I'll just drive the truck around for a little while, see if anything hits, and if it does, well, I'll just do a little bit more trimming on that rib. I'll build a notch in there to let the axle travel up a little further and let me build the exhaust up a little bit further as well. So I think it'll be okay as is, but just something I'll have to kind of keep in mind. In terms of overall ride height of the truck front to back, I'm really happy with how that turned out, because right now we are just about even front to back. Even though I only have a 2-inch drop spindle up front and a 6-inch drop out back, the added weight of that big block and the turbo stuff, combined with the fact that these coil springs have 330,000 miles on them, the front sagged just a little bit more than the 2-inch drop spindle, and so we're basically perfect. I measured it. We're only 1/8 of an inch lower from the fender to the ground on the back than we are the front. These tires, I knew they were too big on the front, and it makes sense now that they're too big on the back. I'll be able to drive it, but they're just really close to this inner lip right here. So either I'll kind of roll that in just to prevent me from like slicing the tires up, but I do know I need to get a different size tire anyway. So I think I probably mentioned this. These are going to go on the Stepside, and I'll get a different dedicated drag set, or I'll probably need 2 different sets of wheels for this one for driving, one for racing. So anyway, that's enough for the UglyTruck for now. We'll get the Stepside in and see if we can't finally fix that exhaust, or at least get it a little bit closer to where I want it. All right, I did just take a really quick test drive on the UglyTruck. I just kind of like went to the gas station and back, pretty much just to make sure that I didn't have any weird vibrations or nothing bottomed out, or like it cut the tires in half from rubbing on the fender. And so far, so good. Everything performed pretty much exactly like it should. So I'm really happy with how that job turned out. And I didn't do a full throttle rip just because it's so cold out, the roads are dirty, and my tires are no good. So as soon as we get a really good day, I'll take you guys out and we'll do a rip in the truck with new suspension and stuff like that, just to see if it maybe has a little bit more grip than it did before. But like I said, until I get some proper sticky tires on there, I think we're kind of going to be at a traction disadvantage. But anyway, that's for another day. Let's get this exhaust knocked out, because I'm excited, because this time I think we're going to get it to a level where it's actually kind of manageable. And I know you guys are probably sick of watching me do exhaust, but I actually find enjoyment welding exhaust. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I really don't mind trying 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 different setups on here to try to dial the sound in to where I'm happy with it. And this time is kind of falling under the category of enough screwing around. Let's get this thing to a proper volume level. So instead of just putting 1 muffler in, we're actually going with 2 mufflers. They're both magnaflows. They're a straight through design. So in terms of like back pressure or restriction, you know, it's a straight shot right through there. So these are like the best flowing mufflers that you can get. We have a 20-inch body, 7-inch round muffler there, and a 16-inch body, 6-inch round muffler there. That's going to replace the resonator that we have in the tailpipe behind the axle, and that's going to replace the Hushpower Pro Series that is in front of the axle. And hopefully with these two in there, we get the overall volume of the system down to a manageable level. That's really what today is about, is getting the volume to where I can stand it. And after that, if it still does drone a little bit, we'll address that with a quarter wave resonator. But I'm not going to mess around doing that until I get the overall volume to an acceptable level. That's kind of my theory. I mean, I'm not an exhaust engineer by any means, but I really love welding exhaust together. So we're going to give it a shot. Luckily, this should be a pretty straightforward swap. I made sure I have enough length in the pipe to get everything, just basically cut one out, weld the other one right in, and we'll be on our way. So let's get to work. So overall, this job has been pretty simple because we're not really doing a redesign of the system. I'm just swapping out the muffler and the resonator for a pair of mufflers. And when I ordered the parts, I made sure that they would fit within the existing system that I have here. Now, I know a lot of you guys have told me down in the comments that a dual 3-inch system would probably be a lot quieter and would have a lot less resonance to it, which I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm sure it would sound quite a bit quieter and it would have a pretty cool sound to it. But so far I've got this 4-inch tailpipe and I kind of want to work within the architecture that we've already developed. So this is the next step of the system. And I'm hoping that when we get it on here, it'll be quiet enough where I can fine tune any drone that might be present with a 1/4 wave resonator. So basically we're going from a muffler and a resonator. This is a Hushpower Pro Series 4-inch. And this little baby Amazon resonator. This did change the tone of the system a little bit, but honestly, it didn't do a whole lot in terms of overall volume reduction. I mean, if you look at the size of it, there's hardly any sound absorption material in there. So it was worth a shot, but when I put this in, I was kind of expecting I'd have to replace it anyway. I was hoping to be able to keep this because I do like the sort of tone and the sound of the system, I guess, but just that combination much too loud. So obviously we get a pair of magnaflows now. There should be a lot more sound absorption or sound removal capacity between the two of these. So hopefully this system is a lot quieter. But at the end of the day, there's only one way to find out. Let's get the system back on. Okay, so with the old system, just taking off from a stop like this, easy throttle, not going crazy, like every time the truck made a sweep through like 2,000 to 2,500 RPM or even all the way up to 3,000, it just had this like really obnoxious, like super loud noise where, to me, for an exhaust to be perfect, like you don't want it to be really loud when you're just light on the throttle. You want it to be loud when you're full throttle, when you're romping on it, but whenever you're just kind of cruising through town, light throttle, you want it to be a little bit quiet. Before, it was much too loud on the inside and probably from the outside as well. The new setup that I have on here, the dual magnaflows, I would say it's just about perfect. Like, I know I kind of said I liked it last time, but this is so much better. Like, it's a bearable volume. It sounds just like a regular truck. Like, yep, you can tell it's definitely a little bit louder. Got kind of rattle coming from back there. That's not a huge deal, but yeah, I really like it. The one thing I do not like about the magnaflow setup is I think I lost a little bit of that unique factor. Like with the Hushpower Pro Series, it's a muffler that not a lot of people use, and like at idle, it had a really cool sound. Like it kind of accentuated the cam. It almost sounded like, to me, you know, like one of those direct injected C7 Corvettes. It had a really cool like just awesome idle sound to it. Where now with the magnaflow, it just like, it sounds good, but it sounds like every other truck out there, which I guess this just goes to show you can't have your cake and eat it too, because I wanted a unique system and a unique sound, and that was like my first objective. That's why when I built the system, I put the X pipe into the Y pipe into the 4-inch, because I really wanted to use that muffler. But at the end of the day, it was not bearable to drive. Where this new system, like, I could drive this from here to Vegas, I could drive it from here to Colorado, wherever, and I would not get a headache. Where before, like, just driving it to the gas station, I was like, I can't stand this. So definitely a major improvement, and I am really happy right now. In terms of drone and things like that, it's actually like, I don't know that I'm even going to make any other changes. The only thing that I thought about tweaking is maybe getting rid of the X pipe, because at this point, I don't even hear any of that X pipe sound that I was kind of going for, and I don't know how good this particular X pipe that I have is even going to flow. So I might just get rid of that. But in terms of drone, like, there's really no problem areas that I've seen. Like right now, cruising in 4th gear at like 1500 RPM. This is probably as worse as it gets, and it's not bad at all. Like, yeah, I could live with this. I don't know that I'm going to make any changes. So I'm very happy with the new exhaust. All right, so we do have to do a couple of full throttle pulls just to kind of give you the full effect. So here we go. Definitely gets louder on the inside when you're standing on the throttle, but that's okay. Like, when I'm on the throttle, I want to be able to hear it, but when you're off the throttle, just kind of cruising around, it's so much more comfortable. So I gotta say thank you guys for watching. It is greatly appreciated. Do me a favor though, drop me a comment and let me know how you think the truck sounds from the outside, because I will have edited a few clips in here, but right now I haven't heard it myself from the outside on the clips. So I'm curious to see what you think. So drop a comment, click the like button if you don't mind, and subscribe to the channel. All those things help us grow in the algorithm. Coming up next, we are going to be re-gearing this truck to 430s, because right now it's got 373s. We have an engine that makes higher RPM power, and not a lot of it, so we are re-gearing it. We're doing an all-wheel drive conversion soon. Of course, don't forget about that power adder that we keep talking about. That's in the works and on the way. So subscribe to the channel. You're not going to want to miss it. Thank you for watching.